A few years back, I decided to be a privileged woman, to live and to walk in privilege. And that decision completely leveled up and completely changed my whole life. Not because my bank account suddenly exploded or life magically got easier, but I realized that privilege was a decision that I could access. And the results were that every part of my life started to match up with that belief. So if you are ready for more, if you are tired of accepting a life where you just settle for less, today I'm going to show you exactly how deciding on a life of privilege changes everything. Privilege is a decision, and when I decided on it, everything shifted for me. And I already know that I need to explain it because it can be pretty off-putting if your definition of privilege is this ugly version of entitlement. I'm not talking about that. Or it can feel like something that is only for those people when you see your life as being stuck in circumstances that you can't change. So what do I mean by privilege? Privilege isn't about being born into the right family or being a certain race or having a certain look. It's not about having millions of dollars or never facing challenges. Privilege is a mindset. It's a culture that you can decide to step into, but most people won't. Most people see themselves as a victim of circumstance. And because of that, they never tap into the advantages that come with having a privileged mindset. So my background and my training is as a researcher. And when I first started talking about this, I mentioned how I looked around at people who were considered privileged, and I realized that there were a set of mindsets and a system of beliefs by which they all operated no matter what type of privilege they had. These were things like expecting doors to open, and so they would go after things that most people wouldn't, believing that they belonged in certain rooms, using what they had without stressing about whether or not more would come. Also, not apologizing for just taking up space. And then I also noticed people who were outliers. So these would be people who didn't necessarily come from wealth or status. They may not have been the most beautiful people, or they had been through a lot of stuff, but they still carried themselves with joy and self-worth and confidence and this expectation that good things were going to happen for them. It really clicked for me that if we extract those mindsets, we can actually all decide to live a life where we expect the best and where we show up for ourselves in a way that reflects that expectation. A privileged mindset is about your worldview. You can live like life is stacked against you, or you can live like life has more for you and you have access to be able to receive it. I have seen both sides. I've met people with money who are still hoarding and afraid and stuck in survival mode. And like I said, I've also met the outliers who are living an amazing life because they know their worth. They decided, I don't have to lay down and accept whatever crumbs life throws at me. That's privilege. Tapping into that for myself changed everything for me. First, it changed how I treated myself. Before I said, you know what, I'm living like privileged people, I was so limited in how I treated myself. Some quick backstory. In my 20s, I had a rough stretch of years where life was just really hard. It was such a shock to my system that my default setting became fear and scarcity, and I learned to just live in survival mode. But that also trickled into how I saw myself. I would cut corners on me. Anything nice that I bought, I would save for a special occasion. The lotion, the candles, the nice makeup, really anything, because for whatever reason in my head, today just wasn't good enough. I was a hardcore people pleaser. I would dim my voice and my presence so that other people would be comfortable. I overgave and I kept people around who weren't good for me because I did not want to feel the pain of loss ever again. When I shifted into privilege, all of that stopped. I recognized that I was worth showing up for, not because I had earned it, not because I had hustled hard enough, but because I was already worth it. So I started using the good things now. I started doing the little things that made me feel special on a random Tuesday instead of just like waiting for a holiday. I started speaking up, wearing the outfit, investing in myself. And I realized that the way that you treat yourself sets the tone for how everybody else treats you. When you don't treat yourself well, you teach other people that they don't have to either, even subconsciously. And so privilege taught me to model my worth first. Another thing that changed was how I treated my stuff and my willingness to let go. Many of you got a taste of that in my Decluttering Like a Privileged Woman video. If you haven't seen that, I will link it down below for you. Before privilege, I would hold on to things just in case. Well, I might need this random pencil sharpener that I got from my last job because it might come in handy. Or let me hold on to this notebook from high school in case I want to remember my calculus notes. Seriously, it was So dumb. I held on to expensive mistakes, things that I spent money on thinking that I would use them, but I never did. I held on to these piles of who I could or should be. I told myself that keeping them was for some reason the right thing to do, but deep down, it was really just fear of letting go. And that fear was hurting my confidence because every time I looked at this stuff that I had held onto, that I had saved for later, that I had stashed away, I saw regret. I saw guilt. I saw a version of me that I no longer was and sometimes actually didn't even want to be anymore. Deciding to choose privilege taught me that letting go is an act of abundance and trust. Decluttering and letting go wasn't about creating this home that was perfect for displaying on Instagram. No, it was about creating freedom. When I let go, I wasn't just clearing shelves. I was breaking these cycles of fear and self-doubt. I was saying, I trust that more is coming and I don't need to hold on to this old version of myself anymore. And that's when I realized that privilege is not about having more. It's about trusting that I can let go of what no longer adds value to my life and also doesn't allow me to add value to others. What I expected out of life completely changed. Like I said, I kind of settled into this place where I expected disappointment. And so there were opportunities and doors that I would not even try to walk into because I just assumed that I couldn't access it. I had no clue how it would work out. So I would overthink it and then eventually talk myself out of it. But I noticed that people with privilege, they don't do that. One of the mindsets of privilege is, I believe it's mine, so it is. And so that's how I started living. I'm not gonna pretend like it was easy at first because it absolutely was not. There was so much just moving in faith and taking these little micro steps of believing for more. I trained myself to start expecting abundance. I started expecting doors to open and opportunities to come. I expected that I belonged in the room. And here's the thing. What you expect, you attract. Scarcity shrinks you. It stops you from being able to see where more is available. But privilege expands you. You start to understand that opportunities are everywhere and that you are worthy of stepping into them. You begin to move with confidence instead of hesitation. You see yourself as someone who belongs at the table and who doesn't have to beg for scraps, but expects abundance. Privilege opens your eyes to what's possible. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So for example, when I started my YouTube channel at 42, it was not because I had it all figured out. In fact, I didn't have any of it figured out. I didn't know anybody who was doing it, definitely not anybody who was doing it successfully. But by the time that I started it, I had taken so many leaps of faith in my life that I was fully convinced that it was going to work out and that it was going to be successful. My mindset had expanded so much to where I was like, I belong in this space. My story matters. And you know what? I will just figure it out along the way. My relationships and my boundaries also changed. Like I mentioned earlier, before deciding to be a privileged woman and to own it, I overgave. I said yes when I meant no. I tolerated relationships and friendships that drained me because I just thought that's what a good woman does. That's what a good friend does. But privilege taught me that boundaries are actually love. When you start walking in privilege, you recognize that you don't have to give until you are completely depleted and don't have anything else left in you. It also means that you don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to do everything yourself. You don't have to know everything. But you do need to surround yourself with people who pour into you, not just pull from you. For me, that meant no longer entertaining relationships that were one-sided. It meant choosing friendships and partnerships and mentors who sharpened me, who respected my boundaries, respected my no, and who also poured into me, who also believed in reciprocity. The payoff of that is when you honor your boundaries, you multiply your energy, your joy, and also your impact. It changed how I worked and how I thought about my purpose. Before deciding to live in privilege, I thought I'm just gonna always have to hustle harder. As a Black woman, we are often made to believe that that is what we need to do in order to be seen and to be valued and to be recognized. So that's what I did. I played the game. I overworked. I constantly tried to prove myself. But it also meant that I waited and I planned and I perfected until I felt ready. For people living in privilege and having a privileged mindset, that's not how they think at all. Privilege says start now. Go after it now. The details will come. You don't need to be perfect to start. You don't need permission to step forward. Privileged women move before they feel ready because they trust themselves to figure it out. They trust that the details will work themselves out. Now, it does not mean that they act in stupidity. They just don't act in fear. That's how I started my YouTube. It's how I have taken risk in my career, not because I had certainty, but because I chose privilege over procrastination and perfectionism. That is how purpose unfolds. You move, and then that path just starts to make itself more clear. The ripple effect of making the decision to live in privilege has been watching every single part of my life level up. My home, my health, my confidence, my relationships, my opportunities, my finances, literally all of it. Deciding to live in privilege changed the way that I see myself. And when you see yourself differently, you start living differently. You start showing up differently, and you have different results and outcomes than what most people have access to because of a simple decision and choice that you made. You stop living like life is happening to you. You stop blaming other people and circumstances for why you're not where it is that you want to be. And that is so powerful because you realize that you can decide for better. And suddenly you see how life is happening for you. As a Christian woman, that truth has been embedded into me even more because the Bible says that Jesus came so that we might have life and have it more abundantly. And so to me, living privilege is just walking in that promise, unafraid, unapologetic, and open to all of the abundance that God has for me. So that's my story of deciding to be a privileged woman and how it has changed my whole life. It is why I root and ground a lot of the things I say in this privileged mindset. Now I want to hear from you. I need you to drop me a comment and let me know one area where you are ready to start living privileged in. How are you going to treat yourself, your space, your time differently this week? Also, if you're not subscribed, like, girl, what are you doing? I'm gonna need you to jump on that. Alrighty, my friends, I love you so much. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, go ahead and share it with someone else who needs it, and I will see you in my next. Bye for now.